What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new around here, welcome. My name's Jessica, and today we are continuing our all things ice cream series. We've made a bunch of different recipes, and today I want to give you a really good recipe that you can pretty much use anytime you want. So today we are doing this kind of like vlog style. It's going to be a little more informal. And we are making vanilla custard ice cream, and this is a vanilla base. So what you can do is pretty much add any topping or mix-in that you want to this ice cream to change it up and to make it a fun flavor. We'll talk more about mix-ins and all that stuff a little bit later. So it's really important that for this ice cream you have everything prepped, you have all your ingredients measured, and you kind of get all of the equipment that you need prepped, because for custard-based ice cream, it has lots of eggs in it, and you have to cook the eggs. But after we heat the cream up, we'll actually have to cook the eggs. And in order to temper the eggs, it's kind of a fast process. So I just like to get everything set up and ready to go. So let's first get all of our ingredients. I have my laptop over here because I cannot remember the recipe. So we need 1.5 cups of whole milk. Make sure that you use whole milk and not skim, not 2%, because with this recipe, you're not going to get the correct texture if you're not using whole milk. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, I kind of like to talk about like the science and the different components of ice cream and how they're affected. And milk actually adds in water to our ice cream base, which is going to be helpful because we need to freeze the mixture. So we'll set that aside. We also need some heavy whipping cream. You need 2.5 cups of this. So we're actually using more cream than milk. And cream is going to add, obviously, a lot of fat to the mixture. And the butter fat in any of the recipes is considered your cream and your milk. And what the butter fat does is it helps have that creamy, silky smooth texture and taste that we all love in ice cream. So get that measured here. I feel like doing this vlog style, I'm a lot messier of a cook than I probably should be. So I'll try to clean things up as I go, but I'm not always great at that. All right, so next up, we need a lot of eggs. It sounds like a lot, but trust me on this one, because once again, the eggs are gonna bring a lot of fat into our ice cream. So feel free to keep the egg whites if you want to use them later. I'll actually probably grab a bowl to save those. Yep. I don't really like to waste things, so we'll make like an egg white omelet or something like that later. Make sure that you crack them on the counter. It's gonna help ensure that there's not shells in your eggs. And then I just like to use my hands, obviously make sure that they've just been washed. It's the easiest way I've found to separate the yolks. So like I mentioned, there are different styles of ice cream. And I did a video all about 7 different styles of ice cream if you're interested and you like nerdy stuff like that, like I do. But a custard-based ice cream is known for the large amount of cream and eggs in the mixture. There are other ice cream styles that actually don't use eggs. Most of those are called Philadelphia style. And because the eggs help add richness and they help thicken the mixture, when you have a Philadelphia style ice cream, you have to kind of replace the eggs. So I actually have a recipe on my blog for that you use cornstarch instead. Okay, now the next ingredient we need is some granulated sugar. This is obviously going to help add some sweetness to the recipe, but sugar plays an important role because it helps make sure that the freezing point stays a little bit above where it needs to be, so that way your whole mixture doesn't just turn into like one frozen solid mix. So you need 1.25 cups for this recipe. So we're gonna grab this. And then the last thing that you'll need is some vanilla. Shout out if you have your own homemade vanilla. I'm actually just starting to make some, so hopefully that will be ready soon. But you need, let's see, you need just 1 tablespoon of this. So because we're gonna be combining it with the milk, I'm just going to pour it in there. All right, good to go. Now, I mentioned that you needed to have another few things prepped. So you'll also want to have a big bowl of ice, and this is going to serve as our ice bath that will cool everything down once we've heated it on the stove. You'll also want another bowl and a fine mesh strainer that you can put in the ice bath, and we'll actually strain our mixture into here, and I'll show you why that's important in a little bit. All right, so next up, we are going to combine our milk and our cream in a heavy bottom pan. I just like to use my Dutch oven for pretty much everything, but a saucepan will work just fine. You can pour this in here, and then we're gonna heat this up in just a minute. So put this to the side. Okay, now the only other thing that we need to have prepped before we get our mixture heated is stirring the eggs with the sugar. This is the part that we're gonna have to temper. And if you've never tempered eggs before, it's not as hard as you may think, but it does take patience and maybe even a couple times of practicing just to make sure that you don't scramble your eggs. So once this is all combined, we'll hang these out here for a sec, and then we're gonna start on heating our cream and our milk up. Okay, so I've moved you over here to my stove. One of these days I need to get one of those nifty little stoves that you can put on your counter. But until then, we've moved over here and we're going to heat up the milk and the cream. So you want to do this over medium heat, and you can stir everything just to make sure that it's combined. But what we're looking for is to the point where it gets to be steamy, but definitely not boiling. We don't want the milk to boil. It'll have like a weird texture if you allow it to get to that stage. So make sure you hang out here and watch it as it starts to heat up. Depending on how like strong your stove is, this shouldn't take too long, maybe like 5 minutes or less. And what we're looking for is steam coming up from the milk. And you can also look, because there should be bubbles on the sides of the like pot that start to form when it gets to be heated up. So while we're hanging out here waiting for this to come up to temperature, I want to tell you a little bit more about my ice cream series. So I'm obsessed with ice cream. I always have been. My husband and I love going to new places and trying new flavors of ice cream. So I've been writing a ton of things on my blog related to ice cream. I have a video for a Screwball peanut butter whiskey milkshake. It's like a boozy milkshake. It's so good. I also have lots of other content on my blog, so I'll link some of those in the description below. But I do have one more video in this series, so make sure that you hit subscribe and you follow along so that way you won't miss that video. Okay, so we finally reached the point where the milk has started to steam. So this is the fun part, but make sure that you take your time and don't get too impatient. So we're gonna grab our egg yolks and sugar, and if you have a ladle, that makes things a little bit easier. We're gonna ladle 1 scoop of the milk mixture into the egg. Make sure that once you do this, you're really quick to grab your whisk and start whisking it together. And this is called tempering your eggs. Like I explained a little bit earlier, this is what makes sure that your egg mixture does not become scrambled eggs, because we definitely don't want that. It will not taste good. So adding some of the hot mixture early in this process just kind of gets the eggs used to the temperature, so that way when you add it in the big pot, you don't shock all of the eggs. So I like to do this a couple times just to make sure that they're nice and heated. No scrambled eggs yet, so that's definitely a good sign. All right, so once you have that ready, you can take out your ladle and you're gonna start whisking and slowly incorporating this mixture into the pot. Make sure that you're whisking, because again, it's making sure that the mixture is agitating and the eggs aren't settling like in one place. From here, we have to make sure that the eggs reach the correct temperature, so that way they are safe to eat. So you're going to continue cooking just on the same medium heat until it reaches 180 degrees. I always use this little instant read digital thermometer. I can link it in the description below. This has been my go-to one. And really, this is handy for ice cream. It's good for grilling to make sure that your meat has come to temperature. So it has lots of uses in the kitchen. So stick it in there, and once your mixture reaches 180, which has already come to temperature, you can turn the heat off. And we're now going to bring it over and strain it in our mesh strainer. All right, so now it's time to strain. So just grab the ice bath that we already prepared, the mesh strainer in the bowl. Make sure you kind of push the bowl so it's kind of wedged in there. And then you'll grab your ice cream base mixture. And this pot does get pretty hot, so if you have baby hands, make sure that you have something to pick it up with. And then we're just gonna pour it right through the strainer. Now what this does is the mesh strainer will catch little bits that maybe either are little bits of eggs that may have cooked during the process, or just like any imperfections. So I do have a couple that are in there, just the little bits of eggs that probably got scrambled. If you tempered your eggs wrong, this would be the point where you would have lots of scrambled eggs, if you will, in your mesh sieve. So it's not necessarily going to make it taste bad as long as they are all strained out. But it is something that after a while you want to definitely practice, so that way you can get better and not have a bunch of scrambled eggs in your ice cream base. But don't worry if it's your first time and you messed it up, as long as you're straining them out, it should be okay. So now is the hard part. Now we have to wait and allow this mixture to cool, because you cannot put a hot ice cream base in your ice cream maker because it won't freeze properly and you'll just end up with a soupy mess, which you definitely don't want. So what we do now is we allow the ice bath to cool it off enough so it's not steaming and it's not going to heat up your refrigerator a ton. So allow this to sit, and then after it's reached not necessarily room temperature but just cooled down enough that you can cover it, we will cover it with some plastic wrap and throw it in the fridge for I usually do it overnight, but it really only needs about 4 hours. What we're shooting for is around 40 to 42 degrees Fahrenheit is what we want the mixture to be prior to putting it in our ice cream maker. So if you're really impatient, you can definitely check the temperature every hour or so and see if it's getting down. But usually around 4 hours will get you to the point that it needs to be. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours. Our ice cream base is cooled. And it's now time to get our ice cream maker out and to actually churn it. So I want to take a sec and talk about ice cream makers. I spent a pretty penny on mine, but the beauty of this machine is that you can churn multiple batches in a row because it has a coolant compressor freezer inside of it. Lots of ice cream makers require you to freeze the bowl up to 24 hours before you actually churn the ice cream. And honestly, for me, it's just like too much forethought, and sometimes my freezer doesn't have room, so I chose to go with this. But like I mentioned, we do love ice cream, so for me, it was worth the investment. But if you are looking for an ice cream maker, I have a whole post on my blog that kind of goes through the different ice cream makers and why they would be good for you. Of course, I'm weird, and I spent hours researching this, so I narrowed it down to my top 3 choices, all of which I was seriously considering buying. So that can kind of save you some time and effort in terms of research if you're looking to buy one. And I'll link that below, but there are options that are cheaper, probably around like $80. And I don't think that's too bad of an investment, especially if you plan on making ice creams a few times throughout the year or throughout the summer. So mine doesn't require you to pre-freeze the bowl, so for this, all we have to do is pour the ice cream in and we're ready to go. So grab the ice cream base and pour it in your ice cream maker. And then if you have a timer on your ice cream maker, it should take about 20 to 25 minutes, maybe even 30 depending on your machine, to fully churn the ice cream. So you just have to sit and wait. If you watch the process, you'll kind of see the ice cream gradually get thicker, which I think is pretty cool to watch. Before you start churning your ice cream, make sure that you also start thinking about what kind of mix mix-ins you want, if any. If you just want plain vanilla ice cream and to add toppings later, you should be good to go. You don't actually need to have any mix-ins ready. But if you want to add in like crushed Oreos or some kind of candy bar or fruit or nuts, make sure that you have those kind of roughly chopped. You don't want anything too big or chunky in your ice cream. And then during the last few minutes of the freezing process, you can slowly add those in about a tablespoon at a time, and they'll get churned in with your ice cream. This is why I really like this recipe, because you can kind of mix it up and add in really whatever flavors you want. I feel like homemade caramel would be super delicious on top of this, or homemade fudge. So if you want to go that route, do it. It would be really good. Once your ice cream is done churning, you need to take it out of your ice cream machine and put it in preferably a pretty thin plastic Tupperware. But I really need to invest in a thin, long plastic Tupperware, because that's really what helps your ice cream freeze the quickest, which if you've watched any of my other content or read any of my other blog posts, you know that it's essential to freeze your ice cream quickly after it's churned in order to help those ice crystals stay smooth. The ice crystals really just help the ice cream taste really silky and smooth, and so we want those to stay small. Sometimes if you've ever had icy or grainy ice cream, it's because the ice cream was left out too long, and all of those ice crystals that you made during the churning process, they kind of clumped together and formed larger ice crystals, and that makes it feel grainy. So at this point, you have to let the ice cream freeze and actually form up for a couple of hours. I know this is kind of like a long waiting game. It's not really instant gratification, which if you just want ice cream quickly, you should probably go to the grocery store and buy some, or go to an ice cream shop and just buy it. This is a longer process, but I found over about 2 days you can easily do this, and to me it's worth the wait because you made it yourself, and I think it tastes a little bit better than the kinds that you can buy at the store. So if you like ice cream, make sure to follow along so you can watch more of the videos in this series and see kind of what's coming up. We have lots more cooking and recipe series coming up to help you with all the summer cooking that you have. So make sure to subscribe and follow along, and I will see you in the next one.